Hello, everyone, and welcome to InvenTank, the show for inventors, where I am joined by a special guest host each and every week to help answer all your burning invention questions. I'm your host, Lisa Lloyd, and we're streaming live today on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. Or you may be joining us and catching us on one of the replays on one of your favorite podcasting platforms. In a moment, I will open up our Q&A, so feel free to drop your questions in the comments at any time throughout our program, and we'll get to them in the order in which they're received. Joining me as my guest host today is Tamara Ghandour. Tamara's company, LaunchStreet, is the go-to innovation partner for companies like Arrow Electronics, Schneider Electronic, Disney, Red Robin, Ricoh, and the U.S. Army Research Labs when they want to create a culture of innovation that wins and develop innovative solutions for their biggest challenges. Her IQE system has helped ignite, scale, and sustain innovation inside and outside of organizations of all sizes. Most importantly, her work helps everyone realize their innovation capabilities and apply it daily. Tamara has been featured on the Today Show, the New York Times, Denver Business Journal, NBC 9 News, just the list just goes on, folks. Listen, we're really lucky. This was quite a find. I'm very proud of myself for hunting her down and very grateful that she's agreed to join us today. So her motto, by the way, that she still lives by, I'll try anything once. And that very much endeared me and is the perfect intro, I think. And to you, Tamara, thank you so much for joining me here today.
Oh, Lisa, thank you so much. It really is an honor to be here. And I will just tell you on my motto, it was an award that I won in computer camp as a kid, which probably told you that I wasn't very good at coding, but I was willing to try.
That's awesome. I have a phrase, no doesn't mean no, just not that way.
Yeah.
And that's,
Oh, I like it.
birthed out of being a kid that constantly asked why, which in hindsight makes sense how I ended up in the world of inventing and
Yeah.
innovation, right? Why is always that first question. So how did you end up in this wacky world of innovation?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I think as a kid, I was always drawn to new ideas and developing stuff. So I was always not like necessarily tinkering with stuff physically, but I was always like, oh, if I did that, I would do it this way and I would make the product look like this. Or oh, if I was at this, hotel, this is how I would run the hotel. So I think I always was trying to like find products and services to create in the world. And then when I got out of university, my big dream was to be on Madison Avenue in New York City. So this is in the 90s, just to date
Sure.
myself. But that's where all the great creative was coming from. It was very Mad Men. And so I got a job as like, the lowest on the totem pole because I didn't, have any in. I just moved to New York City. I had an apartment and a subway token and I just did it. And I loved advertising. But in advertising, I then realized I wanted to be part of the bigger picture, which was brand strategy innovation. And what I ultimately fell into was developing new products for mostly consumer goods companies. So if you've pushed your cart down the aisles of Target, or Walmart or any of the big box retailers, you've passed products that I've worked on for General Mills, Procter and Gamble, Clorox, I mean, fill in the blank. And I loved it, loved it. But along the way, two kind of things. First of all, Lisa, no joke. I think I quit my job every 18 months to go do my own thing. So I'd go do my own stint, right? And then I'd come back to corporate. I'd go do my own thing and then come back to corporate.
I can still relate to that.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
It's amazing anybody hired me, to be honest. But some of those things were really successful and some of them were total failures. I'm happy to share both. But along the way, I'd climbed up the corporate ladder, got to the top and realized I love innovation, but I don't love going behind the black curtain, giving people the ideas and then walking away, which is ultimately what new product development does. I wanted to actually find a new wall that was more about how do I drive this innovation of capabilities in humans so that we can do more of what we want to do, right? So we can find those ideas that are kind of our big ticket ideas, or find innovative ways to bring it to market, or lead our teams, or kind of whatever it is. So my company, LaunchStreet, now that's why we focus so heavily on that human side of innovation, because what I really realized is, when I was giving people ideas, so I'd say, here's your new product, it's going to make you $1 billion. They still wouldn't necessarily bring it to market because it didn't come from them, right? It came from the consultant behind the black
Not
curtain.
invented here mentality. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
what I learned is that if I can actually show you, Lisa, how to pull those ideas out of yourself First of all, you have better ideas than I do. You're brilliant, right? We all have them. It's our work. We work all the time on whatever it is. So I realized that if I could teach you how to do that, then those ideas were going to go to market, whatever they were. So that's the kind of the short story of how I got here.
So what exactly does LaunchStreet do for its clients?
Yep. So we foster innovative ideas in people. And what that translates into is a couple fold. So on one side of the business, the live side, I do a lot of keynote speaking for associations, companies, teams. And I also facilitate or lead a lot of workshops, retreats, right? Where kind of they're trying to do two things. One is they're trying to drive innovation, like get their people to be innovators, because that's what we need in today's crazy world.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to solve problems. So like, hey, let's get our team to be more innovative, and then let's use that innovative mind to tackle challenges. So that's the live side. The bigger side of the business, which interestingly, we almost stumbled on its scalability during COVID because suddenly we weren't doing live as much, is the tech side, and that is the Innovation Quotient Edge assessment. So that's kind of our big marquee thing. And that's the only proprietary tool out there that tells people their innovator style. And we all have different styles. It's based on neuroscience. I know your style, Lisa, so I think we're going to dig into that. But we've got this incredible assessment, and then an online toolbox so that people can continue to drive innovation and get unstuck when they need it most. So that's the part of the business that we spend a lot of time on. It's really exciting because we can scale it across the globe. I love the live stuff because I learned so much from the people I work with. But I love the idea that like you as an inventor can go take our assessment and get our toolbox and go further faster, or as a team, you can do it too.
Right. So my mind is spinning because I'm so excited. I listened to your podcast yesterday for the first time and I fell in love with it. So go ahead and tell our audience what that is, because it's mind blowing.
Yeah, thank you. I'm so glad to hear that, because the podcast is about the people I interview, really. And it's called With Tamara Ghandour. So it's me. So if you type in everyday innovators, you'll find it too. But with Tamara, I interview everyday innovators from across the globe who are thinking differently, innovating, shaking things up. They're everyone from, I just this morning interviewed someone who is the CEO of a pretty large tech company in the market research space, to someone who's an administrative assistant, to an entrepreneur, to a startup, to someone who's like leaving their job to transition out. The common thread between all of them is they're innovating, right? They're thinking differently. They are looking for ways around and under and through that brick wall. I just have to tell you, Lisa, it's the favorite part of my job because I just get to hear from all of you.
Great conversations, right?
Yeah. Like, what are you doing? And you're on the other side of it too. Like, what are you doing to move the needle for yourself? And I think we as humans, we underestimate the importance and the value of the little things that we do every single day. And so my podcast brings light to those.
Right. So for the sake of our audience, just to make make it clear in terms of defining the difference between innovation and inventing. When I'll say from my perspective, inventing is actually the reduction to practice of a physical good, versus innovation, which could go across systems and processes, best practices, whatever, innovating on anything to ultimately deliver a superior experience, and that would include products as well. So yes, would you add anything to that?
I love how you said it. I'm going to give you the definition of innovation that we've curated at LaunchStreet that helps our clients embrace it and make it accessible to everybody. And that's simply this. We define innovation as thinking differently about what's right in front of you to create an advantage. So thinking differently, right? A new perspective, a new approach, a new mindset, a new angle about what's right in front of you. So your challenges, your opportunities, your resources, right? All of that to create an advantage. And to your point, that advantage is a better way to manage your schedule and get it all done. Because as an inventor, you're wearing every hat at that point, right? Or it's a way to market your product, or a way to improve your product so the customer finds it more valuable. So that's how we define innovation. It really is more about that thinking stage and applying it to everything.
So do you work primarily with, say, the design thinking methodologies and processes, or do you have other best practices in place for that?
Yeah, we have others. I love design thinking. I think it's fantastic. I think what's most fantastic about it is it brought customer viewpoint into the company. So that's great. But our methods are much more about pulling out that brilliance inside the people versus just the consumer. So we love the consumer, the customer, we love them. But I want you, Lisa, to be able to pull out so you are a tweaker futuristic, which I know we're going to get into, but I want you to be able to pull that out into everything that you do. So we have a ton of exercises and methods that are built to unleash that innovation inside of yourself and the people that you work with, and then apply that to all those other angles.
So this is perfect. I would like to get into the IQE assessment that I did, and I am very excited to review it. So you all know, in our audience, I am reviewing this with Tamara, sorry, for the very first time. We have not talked about this, so you're hearing about it with me for the first time, and I'm actually a little nervous, and I don't know why.
We're putting the spotlight on you, Lisa.
Oh, I know, but what if you say something embarrassing? I don't know what's going to happen here, folks. So we're going to learn together. But before we do that, would you just tee up why you came up with the IQE and what its intention was for companies?
So there were 3 experiences that led me to the creation of it, and I'll kind of go through each of them quickly. The first one is very, very early on in my career when I was in advertising. I was an account coordinator, which is like the lowest of the low of the totem pole. Like if I got coffee and made copies, I was lucky. Okay, like I was just lucky to be in the room. But I had this great boss, and she made me responsible for putting together the big strategic meeting for the year, which was where everybody came together to create the strategy for the brand we were working on. So clients, right, account coordinators, account management, the accounts payable, like anyone who touched the brand was there. And especially the creatives, because they had the mojo, but especially Steve. And maybe we all have a Steve in our life. Steve was the one who just oozed creativity, and like you were just lucky to be around him, right? And have a pen and paper. He was so innovative all the time. And he was the one that we really needed there. So the meeting rolls around, everybody's there but Steve. He decides not to show. And no joke, Lisa, here's what happened. So he's not early, but creatives are never early. He's not on time. Creatives are never on time. 20 minutes after rolls around, 40 minutes after, everybody's staring at me because we're waiting for the meeting, but we need Steve to tell us what to do, right? We need our innovative genius. And sure enough, I start dialing for dollars and I call all over the building. He's nowhere. I finally reach it at home, and Lisa, this is what he says to me. He says, I said, where are you? He said, oh, I'm not feeling the mojo today, so we're going to have to reschedule. And he hung up on me.
Oh my God.
And I thought that my career was over. I thought I was going to be fired. My one job, right, was to get everybody, but particularly Steve at the meeting. So I'm like, this is it. I'm like, I'm 22. I'm like, I'm out. I'm done, right? My career's over before it started. Well, the most amazing thing happened. After we got over the awkward silence, suddenly Jill from Accounts Payable says, hey, I've been seeing this trend with the dollars, and it led me to this idea. And the guy, Greg, who did the media buy, right, bought advertising, said, hey, I've been seeing this trend with our competition. That led me to this idea. In that meeting, without the guy that we had deemed the innovator, we came up with a strategy that grew the business 18% over the next year and a half without Steve. And so it was my first like realization that, hey, you know what? We actually all are innovative. We just don't know how, or maybe we don't have permission, or maybe we've been trained out of it, or maybe we're stuck, right? It happens to all of us. So that was my first experience. The second one was I was coming off stage and feeling really good about myself. I'd given a kick-ass keynote, and I was like, woo, this is so amazing. But I'd shared all the obvious stories, right? Apple, Google, Southwest, right? I mean, it's like, it's almost embarrassing now looking back at that day, but I felt really good about it. So I got off stage, and this woman came up to me and she said, so Tamara, I loved everything you said. That's all great, but how does it apply to me? And I said, what do you mean? And she said, well, what am I supposed to do with that? And I just thought, well, what do you mean? You're innovative. Like, take what I'm saying and apply it. But
just believe me.
Come on, lady. But she was so right. And I thank her to this day for that slap on the face, because she really made me realize that what we're missing is an understanding of how we innovate so that we can apply it in the human side. So I can talk on and on about processes and initiatives and like, you know, give you exercises to do. But if you don't buy into it and believe and understand how you do it, it doesn't matter. So those two experiences, coupled kind of with this third one where I had a client who had spent an unbelievable amount of money with me to come up with the next line of products, basically shut it all down because they didn't see the brilliance in the ideas. And let me just be very clear. I don't blame them. I walked into that meeting having spent 6 months figuring out how to push the boundaries and how to drive these new products out into the market, into a room of people who had their own problems, their own pressures, hadn't been thinking about it. And he was jaded, super jaded. I call him Mustache Man because I don't remember his name. So we'll just call him Mustache Man. He had the biggest mustache you've ever seen. It was like Magnum PI. It was like so big.
That's awesome.
I love him. So whoever he is, I need to thank him. If he ever hears me talking about him, I hope he'll call me so I can say thank you. Because that day I realized if I don't give people a tool to drive their ability to innovate, why would they believe it? Right? Why would I buy your idea if I'm not in the mindset that's even open to it? And there's a lot that we can talk about with selling your products and services and your inventions out there. But those three things came together, and that's why we spent the time and the energy to dig into the neuroscience and the behavioral psychology behind it to create the assessment. And you are futuristic. I am a risk taker experiential. So we're a little different.
Okay, so we're going to share this on the screen, and I went ahead and just jumped to my power triggers. So again, this is for folks who are just tuning in. We're looking at the IQE assessment that Tamara has created and makes available. What is it? It's like $49. I mean, we're not talking about a lot of money if you want to do something like this. And I'll tell you what, I don't know that I would have recognized the value of it to even spend $20 on it, if I'm brutally honest, just looking at it on your site until I did it. And then I was like, holy cow, it gave me peace of mind, and it made sense of things that I didn't understand about myself that now I'm proud of as opposed to ashamed of. It actually changed my perspective. So let's dig into actually maybe what the better option here would be to start with what all of the different types are.
Yeah. Oh yeah, go back. You have to scroll down to the it's at the end, closer to the end, right?
Okay.
I think that's the page you're talking about. With
This is the one I was talking about. Yeah.
So yeah, let me just say this. There are 9 ways we as humans innovate, 9 different styles. And what happens is when you take our assessment, what you understand is we each have 2 power triggers. So that is our wellspring of innovation. That's how we're naturally hardwired to be innovators. It is a wealth of innovation in our brains. And then we have 1 dormant trigger, and that's our least powerful. I don't like to call it weakness because I feel like that's a comparison game, but it's the place that if we play there too much, it's going to exhaust us. And some of us accidentally do and sabotage our ability. What's interesting is this comes together. So your 2 power triggers and your dormant trigger to create your unique everyday innovator style. So as you can imagine, there's all these different combinations. And what I love about that is, Lisa, your tweaker futuristic with a dormant of instinctual is unique to you and very different and very important in a different way than me as an experiential risk taker with a dormant of collaborative who brings innovation in a whole different way. So what's cool about this is, or let me say it differently, what I think clients who are both inside companies and inventors and entrepreneurs will tell you is it helps them leverage their greatest strengths to drive innovation. And if you're out there and you're thinking, I'm not an innovator, I've got a product idea, but I'm not like an innovative person. Really what you're saying is, I just haven't used that muscle in myself in a while and it's dormant, and that's okay. Or I've been trained out of it because there's been consequences for drawing outside the lines in my world. I really want to be an inventor. I've got this thing, nagging inside me to this idea, but it's not for me. What this assessment will show you is how you can do it not just well, but easily too. So you, Lisa, are tweaker futuristic. So let me just sum it up for people, which I think is so awesome. So the tweaker side is all about optimizing, editing, adjusting. So for people who are tweakers, there's always that one little adjustment that's going to make all the difference. So you don't necessarily see things in success and failure too quickly. You tend to find that one little thing, that one little shift, which is often, as we all know, the difference between average and breakthrough is that one little adjustment. So that's the tweaker side of you. And the futuristic is so powerful because you're about the forest through the trees in Tomorrowland. So while the rest of us can get stuck in today and even yesterday, you're like, how do we turn today's challenges into tomorrow's opportunities? You're often 10 steps ahead of the rest of us because you see, right, how things impact and ripple out and ripple out. So you tend to build longer lasting innovation too, because you're thinking 10 steps ahead, not just in today. So that combination, the tweaker futuristic, is optimized forward innovation. And here's what's interesting, Lisa, and I want to hear your perspective on this one. This is what's cool about this combination in particular for you is that the futuristic side of you is jumping forward, right? Like, what's next? How do I push things to Tomorrowland? Then the tweaker side of you takes what exists today and edits and adjusts and optimizes it until you get there.
Yeah.
I think that's so cool. Like, even
It's
saying it makes me excited for you.
amazing. It really does make sense, because even years ago, most people don't know this, I used to be very involved in the ministry. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we did, well, anyway, I did a lot of speaking at that time, and I called myself a bit of a bushwhacker, in that I was out there breaking new ground and setting paths for people to come up behind who were maybe too scared to traverse that, but making it safer and all of that. So that's how I saw myself. That would be the futuristic side of me.
Yeah.
Way out there taking those risks. And the tweaker side it's definitely how I live my life on a day-to-day basis, because you can't always be living in the future. You have to still live in the present. And the only way I could reconcile that and make peace in my spirit, because I genuinely thought I was crazy as a teenager. I didn't know where I fit in with anyone. You know, I always said I was friends with everyone, you know, the jocks, the freaks, all of them. But the truth is, I wasn't really friends. I could get along and move in and out of those circles, but I never really felt like I fit in anywhere. And so on my best practices for my business, what I learned was I just had to constantly be adjusting. And I'm an only child, so I had to solve all my own problems anyway. But, you know, I just have to kind of adjust things that aren't quite working in the moment, with the hope that it will work better going forward. And if not, continue to. In fact, I remember learning the word iterate as a very, I don't know, it was early 20s maybe, when it became at least part of my consciousness. And iteration became, I was so excited. I felt empowered learning the word. So that was my take on all of that.
Oh, first of all, that's fascinating that it showed up so early in life too, right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
push forward. And I'm gonna fast forward us to today for a second and say what the thing that really kind of brings to life for me for this combination is different for other combinations, and I can share a little bit about that in a second, is if you want to find that invention, sell that product, if you want to add value to your customers, wow them, right, and clients, and you're a tweaker futuristic, think for a second how amazing it is that you have the ability to say, oh my gosh, if we just took this cup and just adjusted the color, it would sell. Of, oh my gosh, if you just took the packaging and moved it this way, this would be a much better idea, right? Or like you just said it to me, you said about the website, which I'm going to ask you about later, of like, I don't want to try something value, but I was looking at your website until I took it. Well, that's a tweaker and a futuristic, like, this is how you need to adjust things, right? From where you are to where you need to be. So the value that you bring to your own business and to somebody else, like to your customer, is incredible in this way. And I think all too often we get stuck trying to build a business or be that partner that it's not based on our strengths. It's based on what we think the market wants, but then we miss the mark all the time. I'll give you a quick example. I have an inventor, a client who is a collaborative. They are hold on, let me think about it. Collaborative instinctual. And instinctual is all about connecting dots in circuitous ways and kind of finding insights and patterns. And collaborative is all about pulling disparate people and ideas and experiences together. She had a toy company. So she launches this company. It's online. She does it in the middle of COVID. And everything is like pushing out online, like social media is online, right? The sales are online. She, not only were the sales lackluster, but she was feeling lackluster. And she took the assessment and she told me what she realized was she didn't build her business around her strengths. Her strengths are about collaboration, right? Pulling and connecting. She needs that to drive innovation and to feel that sense of satisfaction in her work. And the instinctual is all about this, like finding insights and patterns, how things connect. And she wasn't doing that. She was just siloing like these toys out there. So she switched up her business model. She's still selling the toys, but now she's got this mom council that meets every week online, and she gets feedback and ideas from them. She pulls in other like best practices from other industries to then build her business. So she had built a little silo for herself because they had said, hey, build a business online, right? Like that's what you do. But it wasn't leveraging her strengths at all. And just making that little adjustment for her made a big difference. So that's why I think it's so powerful. Like for you to know, hey, if I play in Tomorrowland, how can I get other people to go there too? And you do that with your podcast, right? Isn't that what this is about? Is like getting people to see those little shifts that they can make and getting them to the future a little faster. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Now, So I remember one time I took a class. Well, I had a friend who was a design engineer who also was an adjunct at ASU in design engineering. And he convinced me that if I took his class, I could learn how to draw. And I was convinced he was wrong and
Of course.
probably managed to self-sabotage in some way, even if it wasn't consciously, proved him right.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And no, I don't do that stuff. I mean, I can do the best stick figures you've ever seen. Lots of practice at that, but forget dimension or depth, perspective. So the big learning that came out of that for me was this is not where I am best as a creator, but that doesn't dismiss the fact that I have these strengths over here. And one of the biggest challenges I find when I'm dealing with inventors, whether it's as the free strategy things that I do, or even inside the context of my program where I teach, the people have obviously these different, we'll use these 9 as an example, different skill sets that in combination lend themselves more to either the front end or the back end. There's really not so much in the middle because, the protection stuff is taken care of most of the time with attorneys, but even that sometimes falls into play. And if they're really good at the front end, they think they want to hire licensing agents. And if they're really good at sales, they typically just give up altogether and don't try and even invent. They'll just go find stuff to sell from other people, which is where I was when I started. And in fact, I woke up one day, kind of consciously woke up and said, wait a minute, I'm so tired of selling things, either services or products, goods and services that other people are responsible for because they don't deliver on the promises that I'm out there making as the salesperson. And if it were mine,
and that doesn't feel good.
Right? So challenging. So my question for you in all of that is, first of all, do these 9 apply to absolutely everybody on the planet, or are there some people that just are not going to really show up here?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So here's the awesome part. It is for all of us. We all, the science shows us. So very quickly, we all have the structures for innovation intelligence in our brain, and they're mutually distinct. So the beauty is you don't have to be a huge IQ. You don't have to be a VP. You don't have to have gone to Harvard to actually be innovative. We actually all have them. It's like loosely connected side roads. The thing that I want us all to remember is the brain, while not technically a muscle, acts like one. So the more we exercise it, the stronger it gets, right? The less we exercise it, the weaker it is. And in this case, absolutely. So if people tell me I'm not innovative, what they're really saying is I haven't exercised my innovative mind. So it applies to all of us, but we all have, the reason we kind of say that the everyday innovator style is unique is there's hundreds of combinations when you add in the dormant trigger, but also our perspective and our experience is layered on top of that. And just to go back to what you said, which I think is so important about, there's front end in invention and there's back end in invention. And there's room for innovation in both. But we need to know, absolutely. I mean, so I'm going to go off a little bit of a tangent, but go with me. It relates to this.
Please.
Here's the mistake I often see made, and I have made in my past too. We will put our heart and soul into the product that we've invented. And whether that's an improvement on something that exists or something kind of completely, made up in our brains. And it is innovative and it's amazing. And then our innovation ends there. And so we then go to market in the traditional model. And then we package it in a traditional way. We look at what our competition's doing and doing it the way they do it. Or we then try for the same milestones that the brands that are already out there have done. And so we lose all this incredible opportunity to innovate on what I would consider the back end, the sales, the marketing, the distribution. And then we get frustrated. We keep trying to reiterate our product, and maybe it needs a little bit. But really what we should be doing is innovating the business. That's how we're going to become successful.
That's right.
And I'll just tell you, if you looked at Dollar Shave Club, who sold for $4 billion to Unilever, where he innovated, is innovated, or is this past tense innovation, you know what I mean, was actually on the distribution, right? He created a subscription model. He didn't change the razor. In fact, he brought it back to basic, right? He just, his innovation was on the back end. So I say that with a lot of passion because I've made that mistake before and looked at the idea and realized later, oh my gosh, my problem wasn't the idea was bad. In fact, it was brilliant. My problem was that I didn't drive that same mindset into everything else that I do. So if like for me, I'm a risk taker experiential, which is all about innovating and comfortable leaping and figuring it out, innovating in action. If I bring that to the back end too, imagine the inroads I could make if I thought differently about distribution and sales. And for you as a tweaker futuristic, if you just adjusted a little bit and kept adjusting and adjusting how you brought your product to market, how much more successful you'd probably be.
Oh my God, I think about that. I lose sleep over that question.
Yeah.
And for those who may be just tuning in or who are just listening on our podcast, we've got collaborative. So there are 9 IQE quotients. Yes, is that the right
Yeah.
way to say that?
I
Okay,
always call them styles to keep it simple, but yeah.
styles. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So we've got collaborative, experiential, fluid, futuristic, imaginative, inquisitive, and then instinctual, risk taker, and tweaker. And so when I did the assessment, I got the 2, which came up with, as you've been saying, my
Futuristic
regular,
tweaker,
yeah, my power triggers are tweaker and futuristic. But then you also mentioned my dormant trigger. And I'm curious, first of all, I love that you say dormant, like you said, as opposed to here's where you suck, Lisa. So thank you very much. And this blew my mind because
How so?
instinctual came up as dormant. And I would have to say that I have trusted instincts less as I've gotten older with regard to executing on my ideas, but I entirely trust my instincts with regard to testing my ideas. So I don't immediately dismiss them when they come to mind. But I have learned from experience that not everything I do makes money, and that means it's going to take me time and money that I might lose. So going back to tweaking, I would rather take the instinct of an idea that I think may be good and invest the time and maybe a little bit of money if necessary, but certainly a little bit of time in doing the research, collecting the data, defining the market and the opportunity for the product, and is it worth it? And then so it starts with the instinct. But the only reason I continue to iterate and tweak and move forward is because I have data to support those ideas.
So I love this because it's exactly the last line in here, which is you prefer to explore the logical thread or rationalization of an idea. It's exactly what you just said, right?
Yes.
So
exactly.
Here's what I think, Lisa, is so great about what you were saying is if I were to look at the cover of Fast Company magazine and on the news and Silicon Valley, right, I would think that every entrepreneur just leaps and trusts their guts and takes big risks all the time.
Right.
And that's what I would need to do to be an entrepreneur or an inventor of any kind. And what you're showing the world, kind of with putting your IQE out there, is that in fact it takes all kinds. And all of them are important, and they're all going to find that idea, that innovation in a different way. You're going to do it by you just said it. I love it. You said, like, I want to take what's good and then like keep iterating on it, right? You're going to do it by doing that and like pushing into the future. I'm going to do it by building it and pushing it out and making it bigger. Someone who is collaborative is going to do it by seeing all the disparate pieces and how they fit together to be a puzzle. So I think it's important. I really think it's important that we as entrepreneurs, as inventors, and just leaders in this world, that we really understand our own strengths so that we can find more of those opportunities and go after them. And so that we can get success behind the things that we're going after. And I love that you do that. And it's so funny. So my dormant is collaborative. And I'll give you a funny example how this shows up. If you throw me into a brainstorm session, if you're like, Tamara, I want to ideate some ideas, right? I want to figure some stuff out. I'm like, yeah, okay, that sounds great. Like, I will totally help you, and I'm there, and I'll be our risk taker and experiential. For me, if I have something I need to figure out, I need to build it and explore it and get uncomfortable, and then I'll come to you. If I try to ideate out of the gate, I shut down. I'm like, no, I don't. This is not working for me. Like, I need to formulate my thoughts and then come to you. And I think it's important to understand how we work so that we can perform at our peak a little better. And here's the reality for most of us as inventors: we're not Procter and Gamble. We don't have billions of dollars to waste, right? We've got to make the most of what we have. We're going to make mistakes and we're going to fail, and that's okay. But we got to make the most of what we have. So don't we want to perform at our best and with our strongest mind as we go to it?
Oh my gosh. So yes, and when I was a younger person, have you noticed anybody taking this assessment at one point and then maybe somewhere in the future, even the long-term future, taking it again, that there was a change or a shift?
Yeah, so what we find is that it's 90-ish% the same and about 10% different because humans are dynamic. So we grow, we change, as we build and get more intentional, our wiring changes in our brains. So the core of people is the same, but maybe like one power trigger will change, but the other two stay the same. And it's awesome because you're building your strength. You're building your toolbox as you go.
Right. So when I was younger, all I had was instinct, and I had to do that.
Mm,
But what was interesting is, and then I had all of this success at a very young age, and so then, and we did publicity on that, promotion around it to
yeah.
help push the products out there. And then that is what organically created this consultative business for me. People wanted to
Mm,
know how I did it, but the truth was I didn't know what I did that made me successful. I could tell you the steps that I took,
mm,
but I couldn't tell
yeah.
you why they worked. I was too young and dumb to know that those instincts were what got me there. And then when I started doing it again, rinse and repeat with new inventions, I started realizing, okay, I'm just going to keep doing it in the same space with the same companies. And I continued to make money, and that was very safe for me. But I still didn't know exactly why. There were speakers or lessons that I had from other people that I could kind of apply. It really wasn't until a few years ago when I began working with a front end consultant, a boutique firm, that we helped other companies, and I started learning from their perspective, the Clayton Christensens of the world, with
Yep.
competing against luck and disruptive innovation and whatever goes on and on, a long list of best practices that happen in large organizations that I could, that explained exactly what I had done, but didn't know I was doing and didn't have the labels
Yeah.
for,
Yeah.
right? And one of those was stage gate process. I have a
Mm,
stage gate process: define, develop, protect, test, license. That's my iterative process
yeah.
for hypothesizing and experimenting each step of the way so that I can fail fast, fail forward,
Yep.
all of those things until I finally get to success. And the fact that this even described that I do things that way is my mind is just completely blown.
Oh my
All
gosh.
right.
And
So tell me, do I need to work on my dormant trigger of my instincts? Do I need to go back to my instincts? Is that what this is suggesting for me?
yeah, so oh my God, Lisa, I have so many thoughts for you. It's
I
amazing.
know.
So first of all,
Sorry.
I just want to say before I answer, no, it's so good. Before I answer the question, I just want to say I love the story you just shared because it shows us how if we're more intentional about understanding our strengths,
Yeah.
we can do better faster, right? We can be more successful. We can move the needle more. Whatever cliche you want to use in there, but you get the point. It's but oftentimes we're so busy focusing on our weaknesses that we don't understand what makes us a repeatable innovator. And don't we all want more
Mm,
than luck or a one-off? Like I don't think being an inventor or an innovator of any kind should be based on luck or a random aha moment. Sometimes they
right.
come and that's great, but I build my business on being repeatable because I know
Yeah.
how I innovate, I know how my team innovates, and I know the value that we bring to the marketplace because of that. So I want
Mhm.
us all thinking about how we become repeatable innovators.
I love
So
that.
that takes us to your dormant, which is no. Here's the thing. I think what's important about the dormant is if you're playing to your weakness, or I'm sorry, to your dormant, you need to know that so that you don't, right? So you're not sabotaging yourself. Fluid is one of them, and people have fluid as a dormant struggle with ambiguity. They don't, they're not so good at turning ambiguity and clarity. What they need to do is build structure and boundaries to innovate. So we always think of innovation as like it's a free for all, but it's really not. I think those of us on here know that. So that person needed to build their job in a way that brought some structure to the job so they could be better at it. So you don't want
Mhm.
to focus on it. Here's my thing with the dormant. I hire people and surround myself with people who have my dormant as their power. I'm never going to be good at it.
Ooh.
It's going to be exhausting for me to try. I'm going to maybe I'll move it this much. That's fine. But with
Mm,
my
mhm.
strengths, right? I can go way up here. So why wouldn't I leverage my strength? So, hey, make sure
Right.
it's not sabotaging you. Make sure it's not getting in the way of your success and then go find people who have it as their strength and leverage that.
So if someone is, oh, what's a good one? Maybe they're good at whatever. It doesn't even matter what combination they have, but they're convinced that they can't sell or license. They're
Yeah.
uncomfortable with it, which most people don't realize. Everybody's uncomfortable. Even salespeople are uncomfortable
Yeah.
with it. They just have
Yeah.
learned that it's profitable enough that it's worth the discomfort.
Yeah.
So, what advice would you have for someone who maybe doesn't really see those skills and creativity and
Yeah.
innovation and how to apply them outside of the actual reduction to practice, the inventive part of the product?
Yeah. So let me give you an example of an everyday innovator who's in our community who I just absolutely adore. Her name is Mia. And early on, Mia was in the PR space, and she was trying to win a big PR campaign for a movie that was coming out. And so
Mhm.
in that world, I guess what typically happens is people send in RFPs or proposals, right?
Right.
The standard way of doing things in that business. And it was a movie with a very large martial arts element to it, and a main actor from China. And here's what she did. She said, I thought about it and I thought, all right, I've got to sell this guy on why hire Mia to market this show, but I can't do it like everybody's putting it in letters, right? Everybody's selling in the same way. She's
Yeah.
a risk taker experiential. She said, I'm going to be bold and do it differently. So she sent him a Chinese to go box, and in it were different fortune cookies with why she was good, as well as a bunch of other packaged stuff that had to do with martial arts and the other elements of the movie that all came together. She
Oh,
won that
wow.
business. She won that business before the other proposals could even get in the door, and this was a
Oh my
big win.
gosh.
So I love her story because to me, if you're out there going, "Well, I'm not a salesperson," let me just tell you, none of us are, right? But hey,
Right.
that's the cost of being successful in our business, right? We chose to
Yeah.
be inventors. That's the
Right.
hard reality. However,
Right.
I would say figure out how you innovate and then apply that to your sales. So, I've read a lot of sales books, and the challenge that I have with them is I'm trying to be something I'm not. And so I try
Mhm.
to, sometimes I get good nuggets out of them, but I'm trying to be them, right? I'm trying to be like those people in those books. They don't work for me. So I'm a risk taker experiential. So what do I do? Well, when I was trying to get hired to do a keynote for a conference, I sent them a t-shirt with these creative elements on it because I'm a builder, right? Like that's what I do. So if you've got a product and you are an instinctual, I would think about how to connect your product with other products to sell it in the marketplace because you're good at connecting things. So
Ooh.
leverage it in sales and find other ways to connect dots for people and find the value for people. Um, I'm going to add one other layer to this, Lisa. That's the black diamond, but I think this group can totally handle it.
Yeah.
The people that we're selling to are different styles as well. Remember that. So how you talk may not translate to them. So if you're on a call with a retailer and you want them to pick up your product and you're like over there like, it's bold, it's never been seen before, it's amazing, right? If you're talking to me, I'm like, yeah, bring it on. But if
Right.
you're talking to someone who's an inquisitive tweaker, they want proof, they want data, they want questions answered.
Mhm.
So for them, it's like, here's what the data shows us, here's what's been proven, right? So we need to understand that the different people out there need to be sold to differently as well. So that's a little black diamond. There's a lot that goes into that, but just remember that our way of speaking needs to be adjusted.
That's so good. It doesn't matter what your background is, just knowing you're being self-aware enough to know where you're
Yeah.
most comfortable is going to tell you where you're probably strongest, right? Because you're comfortable there, but you can take that comfort and that personality instead of having to put on a new suit to be a different person to do a different
Yeah.
job, you can take yourself, your authentic self, and put yourself in a different
Yeah.
situation and stop trying to do it like everybody else.
Yeah.
Do it your way, right?
And we think of sales as like, it's so funny. It's one of those channels that we think of has to happen a certain way. I get a meeting with a buyer. I then go talk to that buyer, right? Or I get a meeting with a client and then I go talk to that client. The business that I've won have all been won because I dared to do it a little bit differently. And that was more authentic to me and the work that we do. So, if you've got actually, let me go back, Spanx, we all know Spanx, right?
Oh, yeah, Sarah Blakely. Yeah.
Right.
I met
Yeah,
met
yeah,
her
yeah.
when she was first getting started.
Oh, amazing. So here's the nugget of the story that I love. When she went to meet with the buyer and they kind of were like, I don't know, we've already got pantyhose or whatever. She took the woman into the bathroom and showed her without and with.
Yeah.
So whatever product or service you have out there, my suggestion is figure out how to sell it in a way that's authentic to you and that actually allows people to experience the product. That's the
Oh,
part
I
we
love
miss.
it. Love it. And we talk about, and I see some questions coming in. I'm going to jump
Okay.
into that in just a second here, but we do see that over and over again where people try and I've done it. I'm guilty of this, where I read a book and they say, do it this way.
Yeah.
And it feels like putting on shoes that don't fit. It's painful. Now I got to
Yeah.
go run in this. I don't think so. Whereas if I learn from the experience of all these different people, but look inside myself and how to apply what the outcome is with my skills and in the context of maybe what I've learned from these other people, I customize it, and that makes it so much easier, which ultimately makes me more successful
Yeah.
getting across the
And
finish line.
And it takes out that uncomfortable feeling of like ickiness. I think with sales, it
Yeah.
feels icky because we're
Phony.
trying to be something we're not. And we
And
think
that's
sales
when
has
you
to
get
look a certain way.
that's when you get imposter syndrome too. If you're feeling imposter syndrome in this business,
Yeah.
it's probably because you're trying to be something you're not. That's why you're feeling it. Stop it. Don't do that, folks. Okay.
Can I?
Gabriel asks, when it comes to trying to out license or to license your patent, how much of your success has to do with your patent selling itself versus you selling yourself? Also, what is your take on hiring professional B2B caller to pitch a patent on your behalf? So this is exactly what we were talking about,
Yeah.
Tamara.
So if I understand the question right,
Yeah,
Gabriel,
I'll leave
it
it up for you.
is, yeah, let me just make sure I'm getting it so I answer kind of in the
Mhm.
right vein. It is how much of it is like my product selling itself versus selling me, the person behind the product. Is that kind of what you're, I think, saying?
Versus you selling, I think he's saying versus you selling it yourself. So does the product do the job, a good enough job of selling itself, or do you really need to sell it to people? Is what I'm hearing. And
Yeah.
if we're wrong, Gabriel, just go ahead and pop something in the
Yeah.
chat and let us know. But that's what I think. And
Okay. Yeah, no, great. So, oh wow, I love this area of
I know,
discussion
me too.
because okay, so here's the hard truth: the best ideas don't sell themselves.
That's right.
Um, yeah, and you could have the most brilliant invention, whether that's a product or a service out there. The people on the other side of the table don't tend to see its brilliance the way you do, and there's a couple reasons for that. So I particularly in the very beginning, spent a lot of time selling the product. I still do. And part of the reason I do it is because I've learned to love sales. I didn't love it in the beginning, but also I love the connection. Like I love to learn because then it allows me to add value back into the products and services. So I'm out there, but also, so there's all this research been done recently too about what is the driver of sales. And check this out. It is not the what, it's not the how, it's the why. And the person that sells the
Mhm.
why behind why you created the product is you. I'm going to give you an example. I started training for my first ever Ironman. I'm not, I'm like, if I don't get timed out on my Ironman, I'll be excited. Let me just say that. But I've been looking for a tri suit that didn't look like, I don't know, something super technical, like cooler than I am. But I found a tri suit, a triathlon suit, right, that you
Mhm.
wear through all three events, created by a woman who is a triathlete and also a designer. And she applied her design skills to this area. You better believe I bought those tri suits because I was so excited that this woman created her own product, her own brand. So I think sometimes as inventors, we want to abdicate responsibility of sales to somebody else who we think is a sales expert.
Right.
But the reality is people want the why and they want you. And that is could never now more than ever that's so true. I think partially because of the world that we're in, because we've been separated for 2 years, like people want connection. But
Yeah.
I think oftentimes they're buying the why behind it, and that why is connected to me. As I've grown over time, and we have people who are certified in the IQE method, they go out and sell it, but they're selling it from their perspective, right? So they're really, I guess the answer kind of really is the same there. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I want to give you one other kind of tangible takeaway on this question, though, because sometimes, as I was saying in the beginning, like we want somebody else to sell a product for us, but also, right, we think that everybody should get how brilliant it is. Like, obviously, don't you see what this cup does? Like, it's genius, and it is. But if we're not connecting with our customers, they don't get it. So, just very quickly, years ago, I jumped off one of my many leaps into entrepreneur world. I lived in New York City. I'd pass all these shops on the way to work every day, like going to the subway. And what I came to realize is every 3 to 6 months, the shops would totally change over. So the cupcake shop became a bookstore, then it became a restaurant, then it went back to a clothing store. Like they never lasted. And I came from big advertising and I was like, well, obviously I can help these people market and stay in business. So I quit my job. I set up shop in my New York City non-air conditioned apartment in August. Not the best idea. And I started pounding the pavement and going into every shop and telling them I could help them market. But I used my language that I knew from the product I created. So I would go and I'd say, "Hey, Lisa, I'm Tamara. I can help you with market retention and brand loyalty. We can create some strategies to build stronger turn." And I'm going on and on and on, all this Madison Avenue speak that was my language. And for months, nobody spoke to me.
Oh,
Nobody, like, I
wow.
got kicked out of every shop, right? And believe me, 7 days a week, 10 hours a day for months.
Yeah.
Nobody wanted to talk to me. I finally got a job because I had to pay rent at some point. And there was one last neighborhood I hadn't gotten to, and just because I'm a glutton for punishment, I went out to get like close the loop on it. But I walked in and I said, "Oh, hey, Lisa, let's say it's a clothing store. Yeah, I'm with the Insight Group. I can help you get more people to buy more of your clothing. Maybe they'll bring in friends. Maybe they'll stop on their busy day and actually come in when they would normally just walk by." And I heard something I hadn't heard in months. The woman looked at me and she said, "Tell me more." So I ran right out the door and ran away. I didn't know what to do. I had no time.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
I didn't get like, I was like, "Oh, you want," but the point of that story is all I did was adjust my language. That's it, right? Instead of using my product language, which is important to me, very important to me, I used her language as the customer. And had I done that at the beginning, I don't know, maybe I'd be in New York City helping small business owners today. But I ran away, Lisa.
Oh my God, that's so funny. I have 100 of those stories too. I learned very early on, and because I did get started in sales, which is why everybody wants me to represent their product. But I know even as a great salesperson, I'm never going to be as good as you will at representing your own product if you just understand the basics. Basics are sell sheet, video, those basic things, and getting in front of people. But for me, I was always, I had to learn at a very young age to meet people where they were. And I think it happened when I had small children. And I realized I had to get down to their level. If you're talking to a 3-year-old, you can't talk to them. You get in their face and you explain, or you show them how to tie their shoe. And sometimes you have to be patient and go through it, but you have to use their language or they're never going to get it. Meet people where they're at and then walk them to where you want to go is the way that I say it. And the best way to do that, folks, is to be authentic. Say, this is my first time. Say, I'm nervous. I'm sorry, I'm stumbling on my words right now. I'm a little nervous, but I'm very excited to speak with you because you're an expert in the space. And I can't wait to hear what your thoughts and opinions are on my product. So just showing up like that will diffuse your nervousness and take away some of that fear and help you to continue to meet. And people tend to want to stand up for you when you show up that way, even, right? Instead of coming in as an authority, like a bull in a china closet or whatever.
So what I've learned along the way is that nobody wants your brilliance pushed on them. So when you come in with your product, your service, your idea, whatever it is, and you're like, here it is, and all it's great, that people's walls go up. But if you go in with a little bit of humility and a lot of authenticity and a little bit of confidence, because you're playing to your strengths, people will go along the journey with you. And I think the other thing I've come to realize with the inventors I've worked with is that your customers, your potential customers, your community, they are on your side. They want you to succeed. So a couple little mistakes, lessons along the way, like you better believe those people watching, listening, I'm going to be asking Lisa about like where I missed the mark on adding value on the marketing language before I got to the assessment, right? Like I need to know that. But our customers are more willing to allow us to stumble than we think they are. We think we have to be perfect, but we do not. We just have to be open to their feedback. That's all. They just want to be on the journey with us. How great is that?
That's so good. All right. I could talk about that for another hour, but John's got a question here. He's asking, this seems like an activity vector type assessment. My question is, typically, what are the traits of someone likely to be in the position of reviewing new products for their company? So where would they fall? And it ties right in. If you need to know who you're talking to pitch better, how do we know who they are?
Yeah, John, really wise to think of that too. And I will tell you right now, just knowing that the person on the other side of the table is different than you is going to take you further faster. So kudos to that. So every industry has its own patterns and kind of predominance of strengths and dormant trigger. It's kind of interesting. Like, to no surprise, CIO groups tend to be tweakers because, right, that's their job is in IT is to always adjust and edit. Here's what I'd say. I think oftentimes those in those type of analysis jobs, they tend to be inquisitive. So inquisitives are all about digging deep, challenging assumptions, pulling back the layers. They're the ones who are like, well, why? Well, how come? Well, what if? So they want to really dig deep into things, and that's where they find innovation. And that's also how they analyze what's on the other side of the table from them. The other thing we find in that type of role is people who are experientials. And this is really interesting, John, because I'm going to share a story with you that relates to this, because experientials are all about in motion where the rubber meets the road. So my team, I tasked them with coming up with new revenue streams. We had a great service out in the market, but once we served our clients, like there was nothing else for them to do. So we needed new stuff, right? For them to come back. We needed more money out of them. So, and more relationships. So I tasked them with coming up with new revenue streams. So they come to me to present to me the revenue streams and new services and products they want us to put in the marketplace. So they come to me and they go, okay, Tamara, so here's some ideas. In theory, they should work. Our hypothesis is what our data shows us that's like, hypothetical data. And I shut down because I'm experiential. So you better prove it to me. So I didn't
Right.
understand this about myself at the time. This was before the assessment. So they went away, they came back, they'd rework some stuff, but this time they did something very smart. They realized their mistake. So the team came to me and said, Tamara, we have these ideas. We've tested this out. We've talked to 5 clients about this. We have created a mock example of this and worked on it with a client. Here's the feedback we got. And I was like, yes, done, check, sold. I want that. Let's sell that. Because that person is experiential, right? It's all about in motion and action. So don't ever go to an experiential person and say hypothetically speaking. So
Good to know.
yeah. So if you've got, John, if like people in that role are typically inquisitive and they're typically experiential, more than likely you need to come to them with, first of all, allow them to ask questions. That's not them,
Yeah.
kind of poking the bear. That's them innovating and thinking through things. Give them questions to think about, have those answers or find those answers for them, and know that you want to show proof of concept, right? Proof of concept really matters for experientials. It matters in invention all over the place, but it really matters for experientials. And don't say the word hypothetical.
Yeah, right. To those people. Yeah.
Yeah.
And with licensing, I find that, it's easy if I know their title, if it's marketing versus engineering versus
Yeah.
going through legal. I mean, that context alone is going to tell you a lot about what lies at the forefront of their interests, right? Everyone's goal is to make the company more money, but you're going to learn more about what job security looks like for that person based on their title. So marketing is going to be looking at marketing and forward
Yep.
thinking. Innovation is going to be looking at just the front end, not that back end, or not the back end of going to market. All of that influences.
And here's the other thing I'd say too, Lisa, which is it's so basic, but I think it's very easy for us to get wrapped up in presentation mode when we're selling.
Yeah.
And I think what I've learned the hard way many times is just to back up and figure out, ask the person on the other side of the table, like, tell me more about your job. How long have you been there? What do you like about it? What are the pressures or the challenges that you face on a daily basis? Because if I
Mhm.
understand, Lisa, the challenges that you are dealing with, I can better understand how my product or service is going to help you overcome those pressures. Maybe you need to drive 30% growth in the retail space in your
Mhm.
store. Like, that's amazing. Well, then I can talk about how my product's going to help that. But I think those connections really matter. And we just get so busy and like, let me show you it versus like, let me understand where you're coming from first.
Right on. So true. That's a whole nother show too.
Yeah.
Celeste is asking if the test is available online, and yes, it
Yes.
is. You can go to uh, sorry, you can go to launchstreet.com. I was like, I sound redundant, but
No,
yes,
it is. Yeah.
www.go-to-launchstreet.com. And in addition to the assessments, you can see what else is going on there. If you maybe have a small business and you're looking at
Yeah.
anything related to innovation, there's some great resources and tools. And of course, you can reach out to Tamara there. And Gabriel also is asking just one last question here. We'll pop in just before we hit up the top of the hour here. I was thinking of adding a little something to my invention pitch. By the way, this isn't my only invention. I have more on the drawing board. And if you let me see how your company works from the inside, the ideas will just start flowing. Or will a company be put off from that type of
Mm.
approach?
Well, it depends on the culture of the company, I think, like how transparent they are. Here's what I'd say though. I love what you're trying to do with that. You're trying to kind of find the right match, right? And not waste your time or theirs, and not miss the mark out of the gate. Um, I think the challenge is when we offer up too much ambiguity or too many options, it actually shuts down our decision making. So for me, if I were on the other side of that, I'd be like, you're putting work on my plate, and that's too many options. Like, let me just tell me what you got. I think though that you can leverage that after you show them. So if you've got a product that is a new type of injection mold, you could go to them and say, hey, here's my product. What would you do to strengthen it? Or what would you do to make it match your priorities? And then let them tell you where the gaps are. And then you could have a conversation from there about what other possibilities. My fear with too many options out of the gate is it's overwhelming for people. That's why there's 3 sizes of popcorn, right? It's not, we don't have 10, because 10 would mean we don't buy anything. 3 means
Right.
we buy something.
Right. Great feedback. Oh my gosh, this was so much fun. And we only even got in a couple questions, but I'm assuming that's because people were just so fascinated by this. And this wasn't actually my plan to talk just about the assessment, but I'm so glad we got into it and got under the hood, because there's so much value in becoming self-aware. I don't just read. Part of what makes me the business person that I am, and I would certainly say the successful inventor that I've been, is my self-awareness. I am always I am as much working on me and the problems inside of this thing up here and on top of my shoulders, as I am, dealing with this external world and how I can make it a better place somehow with new and innovative products. But this one was especially helpful for me. So thank you so much, Tamara.
Well, it's exactly what we were saying, right? Is how do you become a repeatable innovator so you can have repeatable success? That's what we all want at the end of the day, right? Yeah. We need our first success and we want to repeat that process. And I'll just add one last thing and say that for inventors and small businesses, now's our time. So the world is so shaken up, and big businesses, I do a lot with them too, are really struggling to find their way. And what that really says to me is, for those of us on the smaller side, is our ability to be nimble, to go to market, to adapt to the changes that our customers want from us, to be able to have all these pitches. Our competitive advantage is innovation and our innovative minds. And now more than ever, we have the ability to do it in the way we want to do it and to be successful at that.
Awesome. On that note, thank you so much, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed today's show with my guest, Tamara Ghandour. There we go. I got it right. And if you would like to catch the replay, if you missed any part of this, you can catch it by using the same link that got you here today, or on any of your favorite podcasting platforms, iHeart, Spotify, Amazon Music, for example. When you subscribe, you help me get more guests. So please consider subscribing and following me, and we can continue this wonderful program for free for you. Thank you, Tamara, so much again.
Thank you for having me. It's a joy.
Don't forget, folks, you can go to LaunchStreet.com to learn more about this incredible assessment and anything else that you might need help with on your innovation journey. Thank you all for joining me. Have a wonderful rest of your day.